Over the last number of years, something has crept into the Irish church. Um, it started in 2020, and it was this zealous overcaution as regards using hand sanitizer when it came to giving out communion. In the food safety world, it's not recommended that you use hand sanitizer before you touch food because you contaminate food with the hand sanitizer. You wash your hands well with soap and water before you touch food. It's also not recommended you use gloves. But and if you are going to use gloves, you need to be very cautious with this. But the best practice is washing your hands. And in every sacristy around Ireland, every church has a sink where you can wash your hands. This is, every sink, every sacristy has a sink where you wash your hands. There is no need to use hand sanitizer. But since 2020, the Irish Church in the island of Ireland has spent upwards of 500,000 euros on these things that you find in churches around Ireland, in the 2,000 plus chapels and churches around Ireland. You see these things around there. At the beginning of the pandemic, they were installing these machines and so forth. And while we can pardon at the beginning the overcaution, today, many, many years later, there is no need to use hand sanitizer before you touch the body, blood, soul and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. If you're a priest, you can wash your hands before you say Mass. And also during the rite of the Mass, instead of dingling your fingers, you can actually wash your hands. I've seen some priests during Mass actually wash their hands with the water that they're using and dry their hands as well. But there's this overzealous caution that has crept into the Irish church to such an extent. We'll lather on hand sanitizer and we'll make sure to tell people at Mass, do not receive communion on the tongue. So this is the over caution. The message is, be afraid, please, be afraid, be very afraid, seemingly. The implicit, this is the unsaid message. What are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? When you look at the Orthodox world or the Greek Catholic world, who continue to give communion with the spoon and have never changed during the pandemic, we wonder what's happened to us Catholics that we are so afraid to give communion and to receive communion properly, to show reverence. I mean, this is all the satanic attack on the Eucharist. If Satan can't destroy the Eucharist, he'll destroy belief in the Eucharist in our hearts. It's just a symbol. It's just a piece of bread. It's not necessary. And slowly we have done this in the church. What could we have spent with 500,000? We could have sent 700 people, youth, to a 1 week retreat somewhere. We could have opened a Eucharistic Miracles Museum. We could have opened a Eucharistic Miracles Walk in Knock. Why not expose people to the 40 or 50 most important Eucharistic miracles around the world? Carlos Acutis' miracles, the ones that he was promoting. We could have done a Eucharistic Miracles Walk around Knock with 500,000. But as I said, this overcautious application of hand sanitizer. I mean, I hate tasting the Eucharist with hand sanitizer, and it's very disgusting. It's off-putting, especially if you're the first person to receive the Eucharist after, they've put the hand sanitizer on their fingers. It's not part of Irish food safety legislation, and it's not recommended by Irish food safety regulations at all that you use hand sanitizer when you're touching food. But seemingly there's this notion that of false security, of false compassion, that we need to be doing this. It's not needed. It's not recommended. If your immune system is so weak, for example, you're going through cancer treatment and your immune system is so weak, you probably need to stay at home. you know. But for the vast majority, we do not need these type of precautions. Wash your hands. Wash your hands well in the sacristy before you minister to the Eucharist. And as I said, and I do work in the food safety industry. Well, I do understand food safety legislation. I work in the beverage industry, so I do understand this, and I can tell you that it's in the industry standard. You don't use hand sanitizer before you handle food, because you would contaminate food. If we did this when we were handling different things, we would contaminate the substances that we are handling. You wouldn't use nail varnish and stuff like this when you're handling food. Why would you use hand sanitizer? You wash your hands with soap and water, and then you dry them properly. That's sufficient. But I just thought I'd give this video in good faith. Hopefully we'll start saving some money in the Catholic Church in Ireland. Hopefully we'll be able to fund some good programs like catechesis and faith formation. Hopefully someday we'll have a Eucharistic Miracles Walk in Ireland's Eucharistic and Marian Shrine. So when people go to this Eucharistic and Marian Shrine, they would see the greatness of the Eucharist, like what Mother Angelica did in Huntsville, Alabama, which has a beautiful museum on the Eucharist, on the Holy Sacrifice, the Mass, the history of the Mass, history of the Eucharist. Guys, we could do doing so much more to renew the faith in Ireland instead of wasting money needlessly, pointlessly, wasting money on this in Irish chapels around Ireland. Wash your hands. That's all you need to do. Wash your hands with water and soap, rinse them well, dry them off. That's all you need to do. You do not need hand sanitizer. You do not need to waste money on hand sanitizer. It should not be supplied to churches at all. And, renew faith in the Eucharist. Kneel and receive our Lord Jesus Christ in the tongue. That is the norm in the Catholic Roman Rite. Still, today, in the Novus Ordo, the norm is the Rome. Well, the Irish bishops have a special permission called an indult to allow them to give communion on the hand. It is a permission. It is an indult. That is the official term. I've had canon lawyers check this. A cardinal's actually checked this for me. So I can speak with some authority here to say, renew the norm of the church, communion on the tongue, and if you can, kneeling. So show witness. And it's not because you're any holier than anyone else. We're all sinners. It's to give witness to the next generation that what we're receiving is not just a symbol, a piece of bread. It's the actual body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord. And as with any food, we're entitled to receive the bread of the angels without hand sanitizer infecting it, desecrating it. If any other food out in the market, you wouldn't like it to be touched with hand sanitizer. Well, it's the same when it comes to the Holy Eucharist. We don't need hand sanitizer. Get rid of it. Chuck it in the bin. If you see it around chapels, get rid of it. You don't need it. And I say this as somebody speaking from not just a level of authority when it comes to understanding the regulations, but also from recommending that you renew faith in the Eucharist, because it is the norm of the church to receive on the tongue. And if you can, kneel. It's very sad what we've done, but it's an outward sign of an inner reality. We kneel for our King. How many times in the Gospel, people after they were cured, they knelt down and they thanked our Lord and they kissed his feet. After curing them of leprosy or curing them of blindness or of so many diseases, and they were cripples. They were utterly transformed. And yet we are so ignorant today, so proud that we are not able, if we can, not saying you have to, I'm saying if your knees still work, if you're still in a position to kneel, why not show a sign of respect for the King of the universe, our Lord Jesus Christ? We don't need hand sanitizer. receive communion from the priest. Do not receive it from a Eucharistic minister, unless it's in one of those massive masses, like you're out in Lourdes and you're in that big basilica and there's thousands and thousands of people. Okay, and there's very few priests. I can understand that. But sometimes an extra 10 minutes on a Sunday to contemplate at Mass is something good. You know, we are so... How many times do we spend time in prayer after communion? You know, the priest was ordained to minister the Eucharist. You wouldn't go to a heart surgeon secretary and say, well, look, what do you think of this surgery? You know, you go to the person that's been appointed to do it, to ask them their advice. Well, you know, the priest, the deacon, bishop, and are the ministers of the Eucharist. And then in extraordinary circumstances, we may need extraordinary ministers. You know, that's and again, I'm just repeating what is the norms of the church. The norms of the church is that the ordinary minister of the Eucharist is the bishop, priest, deacon. And in extraordinary circumstances, which in most Irish parishes, we do not have extraordinary circumstances. We just have, and I will say it, laziness. We are too lazy to wait 5-10 minutes more at Mass. And some priests are too lazy to actually minister the Eucharist. You know, if I've children, I look after my children. It's my job. Now, if you're not able to give out communion, like I remember an elderly priest in his 90s and he's got cancer and he says the Mass at the altar, right? He can't move around. He can't walk, okay? And he never gives out communion because he can't get down from the altar, but he's 90 and he's cancer. Okay, you need an extraordinary minister of the Eucharist. Totally understand why, you know, there's balances, but like, you know, you are the ordinary minister of the Eucharist. Man up. I say to priests, man up and be the minister of the Eucharist for us. You know our roles in the church, because oftentimes as part of activism, you know, we want to get people involved in the parish. Well, you'll do this and you'll do that and you'll do the other. What we need people is to create parishes of faith. Anyway, God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.